You bought it to feel like enough. It never quite worked. So you bought the next one. This is not a story about vanity. It is not a story about carelessness with money. It is a story about a very specific, very human pattern, where the purchase was never really about the thing being purchased. The car, the watch, the renovation, the wardrobe upgrade, the vacation posted before it was paid off. Each one arrived with a promise attached to it. The promise that this time, the feeling of being enough would finally land and stay. It rarely does. Not because the purchases were wrong, because the gap they were trying to close was never a gap that a purchase can close. So here is the question this video is going to answer. Why is your self-worth destroying your net worth? Not because wanting nice things is a character flaw. Not because you should feel guilty about what you own. Because a specific, well-documented pattern, spending as a response to an internal sense of not enough, is one of the most expensive and least discussed forces in personal finance. Stay with this one, because the third reason, the one about what actually closes the gap the spending never could, is the one that changes where the money goes from here. 3 reasons, no judgment, just the mechanism made visible. The first reason. Spending is one of the fastest available responses to a threatened sense of self-worth. Here is what researchers have found consistently across decades of work on materialism and self-esteem. When people experience a threat to their sense of self-worth, a rejection, a comparison that stung, a moment of feeling inadequate or overlooked, purchasing behavior measurably increases. Not randomly, specifically towards status-signaling purchases. Psychologist Claude Steele's research on self-affirmation found that when people feel psychologically threatened, they seek ways to restore a sense of self-integrity. Purchasing, particularly purchasing something that signals status, competence, or success, is one of the fastest, most accessible ways to do that. It is not a moral failing. It is a nervous system finding the quickest available tool to resolve an uncomfortable feeling. Here is what that looks like in an ordinary week. A difficult meeting where you felt overlooked. A social comparison that left you feeling behind. A milestone, a birthday, an anniversary of a goal you have not reached, that made the gap between where you are and where you expected to be feel suddenly visible. And in the hours or days that follow, a purchase that has nothing to do with need and everything to do with restoring a feeling. The upgrade, the splurge, the thing that says to yourself as much as anyone watching that you are still someone who is doing well. Now make this specific to your own pattern. Think about the last purchase you made that was larger than your routine spending, the one that was not planned, not budgeted, not part of a considered financial decision. What had happened in the day or two before it? Not the justification you gave yourself at the time, the actual feeling that was present right before the purchase. Because if there is a feeling attached to it, a specific emotional state that the purchase seemed to answer, you have found the mechanism. Not a flaw in your character, a pattern. Nameable, and once named, addressable in a completely different way than spend less. The first reason, spending as response. Status purchases are rarely about the item. They're one of the fastest available responses to a threatened sense of self-worth. The purchase is not the problem. It is the symptom of a feeling that deserved a different kind of attention. The second reason, you are comparing your Celsius against a picture that was never complete. That is the mechanism, the internal trigger. But the trigger does not operate in a vacuum. It is aimed by something external. Something most people never examine directly. Here is the specific distortion that shapes status spending. You can see what your peers, colleagues, and social connections spend. You cannot see what they save, what they owe, what their actual financial position is underneath the visible layer of consumption. Research consistently shows that people have visibility into a small fraction of their peers' actual financial reality: their income, their debt, their savings, their net worth, while having near complete visibility into their consumption: the car, the vacation, the renovation, the clothes. Which means every comparison you are running, consciously or not, is a comparison against incomplete information. You are comparing your full financial picture, which you know intimately, against other people's visible spending, which is the only part of their picture you can see. That comparison is structurally rigged to make you feel behind. Not because you are behind, because the information available to you is asymmetric by design. A 2019 Charles Schwab survey found that 57% of people reported spending beyond their comfortable means specifically due to social comparison, driven by what they observed others acquiring, not by any independent assessment of what they actually needed or wanted. Here is what that comparison costs in real terms. A vehicle purchased primarily for status, the upgrade beyond what function requires, commonly carries a premium of $20,000 to $25,000 over a comparable, reliable alternative. That premium, invested instead at a 7% average annual return over 10 years, compounds to approximately $47,000. Not from depriving yourself of a car, from choosing the version of the car that met the actual need, rather than the version that answered a comparison you were never equipped to run accurately in the first place. Now hold this mirror up directly. Think about your specific peer group, the people you are, consciously or not, measuring yourself against. How much do you actually know about their financial position? Not their visible consumption, their actual net worth, their debt, their savings rate. For almost everyone, the honest answer is almost nothing. Which means the comparison driving real spending decisions is being run against a picture that is, at best, 1/10 complete. As we covered in why comparing your finances to others is ruining you, the comparison itself is the flawed instrument, not just the conclusion it produces. You cannot out-earn or outspend a picture that was never accurate to begin with. The second reason, the incomplete comparison. You are comparing your full financial reality against everyone else's highlight reel. That comparison is rigged before it starts, and the spending it produces is chasing a picture that was never true. The third reason, the purchase was never going to prove what you needed proven. Only evidence does that. The trigger explains the moment, the comparison explains the direction, but there is a third layer, the one that explains why the purchases keep happening even after you understand the first two. Here is the honest reason the spending has not worked. You are not trying to prove something to other people. You are trying to prove something to yourself. The car, the watch, the renovation, each one was an attempt to generate internal evidence. Evidence that you are successful. Evidence that you are enough. Evidence that the gap between where you are and where you expected to be does not actually exist. And here is why a purchase can never generate that evidence, no matter how many times you try. A purchase is external. It sits outside you. It can be seen, photographed, driven, worn. But the thing you are actually trying to prove, that you are capable, that you are building something real, that the gap is closing, that is internal. And internal claims require internal evidence. External objects cannot generate internal proof, which is why the feeling never quite lands, why it fades within days or weeks, why the next purchase feels necessary not long after the last one arrived. The evidence that actually works, the kind that produces a durable sense of enough, comes from a completely different category of action. The debt that got paid off, the negotiation you prepared for and executed, the savings rate that moved because you decided it should, the skill you built that the market now pays a premium for. Those are internal achievements with external proof. They generate the evidence a purchase never could, because they are actual demonstrations of capability, not symbols purchased to represent it. Now ask yourself the question that reframes everything. The next time you feel the pull toward a status purchase, the upgrade, the splurge, the thing that would finally prove you are doing well, pause before the purchase and ask, what is this actually trying to prove? Name it specifically. That you are successful, that you have not fallen behind, that the effort you have put in is finally visible. Then ask the second question. What is the smallest real financial action, not a purchase, an action, that would generate genuine evidence of that same thing? The extra payment toward the debt, the contribution increase, the negotiation you have been avoiding, the number in your investment account that would move if you redirected the money instead of spending it. That action, however small, produces something the purchase never could. Not a feeling that fades in a week. Proof that compounds. Every video on this channel starts with why. Why your biggest financial problem is not money. Why you keep making the same money mistakes. Why comparing your finances to others is ruining you. Every assumption you are handed about what proves you are doing well financially. Questioned. If this video made you pause before the next purchase and ask what it was actually trying to prove, that is exactly where it was supposed to land. Remember this. The purchase was never going to prove what you needed proven. Only evidence does that. The debt paid, the rate negotiated, the number that moved because you decided it should. Build the proof, not the symbol.